As a matter of fact, if you're overweight right now, and I used to be obese, I was 80 pounds overweight, you don't have a weight problem. I never had a weight problem. Nobody in the history of this world has ever had a weight problem. It's a weight symptom. It's a result of the problem. So counting calories, focusing on calories, is similar to treating the symptom. Getting to inflammation and hormones is similar to getting to the cause.
It isn't about being perfect. It's about being better. Hello, my name is Dr. Stephanie Estima, and I host expert discussions with thought leaders in all facets of health, including nutrition, fitness, hormones, stress management, performance, recovery, longevity, health span, and energy production. On this show, we discuss complex science, but then we also alchemize it into actionable, everyday living. The ultimate goal with the show is to assist you in making informed decisions about your health and to catapult you into being the hero in your own life. All right, Betties, welcome back to another episode of Better with Dr. Stephanie. It's me, your host, Dr. Stephanie Estima. Today, we are talking about metabolic freedom, what that entails, how to get it. If you don't have it, how do you know you don't have it? And what are the steps to achieving this metabolic utopia? My guest today is Ben Azadi. In 2008, Ben Azadi lost 80 pounds of extra weight getting metabolically healthy. And ever since, he has been on a mission to help people live a healthier lifestyle. Ben is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, and he's had over 16 years of experience in the health industry. He's the author of 4 Amazon best-selling books, and he's an international keynote speaker. He's been featured on Forbes, LA Weekly, Disrupt Magazine, New York Times, and many others. So we talk today about the cornerstones of inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. So how do you know that you are chronically inflamed? What are some of the tests that you can do? And what are some of the action items that are going to help reduce that chronic low-grade inflammation that is going to lead to metabolic freedom? We talk about some of the misconceptions around metabolism. Of course, metabolism is very complex. And we tackle some of the misunderstandings around calories in, calories out, around hormone dysregulation, around detoxification, and much more. If you are somebody who is looking to improve your metabolic flexibility and your metabolism in general, and the data tells us that at least somewhere between 88 and 92% of us are metabolically unhealthy, this is going to be a really good starting point. Ben does a really good job at simple science and explaining that. So please enjoy my conversation with Ben Azadi. All right, Ben, welcome back to the show. So good to have you here.
Oh, Stephanie, love what you're doing. Thank you for having me back.
We are talking about your new book. Congratulations. And I wanted to actually start with one of the cornerstones of your book. So I've read your book, and one of the things that you make absolutely crystal clear is this idea that reducing inflammation is sort of the key. That's sort of the main gig, right? That is going to help restore metabolism, lose weight, balance hormones, reverse disease. So let's start with why. Why is inflammation so important to get under control?
It is really the cornerstone for metabolism, longevity, energy. I mean, everything we're seeking in this life. And it's not necessarily just inflammation, it's chronic cell membrane inflammation specifically. And we know there are 2 main types of inflammation. We have acute inflammation, which could be very beneficial. Working out, breaking down muscle. Of course, you could sprain an ankle, get a sore shoulder. That's acute inflammation. The body will send whatever it needs to send to heal that area. But I'm referring to chronic cell membrane inflammation. This is the boogeyman that we want to avoid or to get rid of, because when our cell membranes are inflamed, you teach this so well, Stephanie. You teach the science, hormones, and how it interacts with the metabolism so well. Every cell has these receptor sites, these integral membrane proteins. They're receiving signals from all of our hormones, the food we eat, even our thoughts. Oxygen needs to connect. All these things need to get into the cell to signal a response for the mitochondria to go through its electron transport chain to produce energy, for the cells to detox and allow the bad stuff out while the good stuff comes in. We're designed to thrive, and that's the way we're designed to function. When there's too much cell inflammation, those membranes become inflamed. now they become rigid. And now those receptor sites become blunted. It's like we were just going through the tech stuff here with Brock. If I muted my mic right now and I'm
best AV producer ever.
Yes,
best AV producer
podcast
ever.
Producer ever, Brock.
We love
Shout
you,
out
Brock.
to you, Brock. And this would piss him off if I did this, but if I muted my mic and I'm shouting at you, this is like your hormones shouting at you, or even taking hormones, but the mic is muted, there's too much inflammation, the message is not being received, you're not going to feel well. You're not going to get the message, Stephanie. Brock's going to be pissed off at me. The audience listening will be angry. There's going to be dysfunction. Similar to cell inflammation. Your metabolism is not going to function the way that it was designed. You're not going to take food for energy. Your supplements can't get into the cell. Even hormones that you might be taking exogenously, your blood levels might improve, but if it's not getting into the cell, you're not going to feel well. You're not going to feel better, which is the theme of the podcast. So it's all about finding what has caused that cell inflammation, removing the interference. Now your metabolism functions better and you start getting the results you want.
All right, so let's dig a little bit deeper. How do we know that we are inflamed? How do we know that at the cellular level that we might be, some of these things that you're talking about, this hormonal disruption, let's say, you talk about metabolic handcuffs in the book. How do we know that these things are happening? Are there signs and symptoms that we might look out for in everyday life?
Yes, so there's symptoms that you could pay attention to, and then there's some testing you can do. I'll start with the symptoms. The symptoms are really important. We have been brainwashed to believe that symptoms are evil. We should hate it. We should mask it up. That's more of the allopathic conventional sense that we need to prescribe a medication, perform a surgery, and there's a time and place for it. But for the most part, those symptoms are blessings. They're gifts. It's the body's way of communicating to you. Just yesterday, I drove from Miami to Fort Lauderdale for a podcast interview, and on my car, a little wrench has been showing for 2 weeks, showing that you're due for an oil change and a checkup, and I just been traveling and busy and not made the time for it. So this is a check engine light essentially, and the symptoms are very similar. If I keep driving my car for years and I just ignore that little wrench, it's going to lead to a disaster, right? So the same thing with the body. Once we have symptoms, this is those little wrenches showing up. It could be brain fog, afternoon fatigue, you're starting to gain weight, your sleep is suffering, joint pain. I mean, there's a whole bunch of symptoms, but the symptoms are not the problem. They are a result of the problem. It's actually a blessing. The body's communicating to you in the form of symptoms. So the most common ones in terms of being a sugar burner, which I make the case is a fast path to a short lifespan and metabolic disease. The things to pay attention to when it comes to those symptoms are, hey, do you feel tired after eating a meal? Do you have more than 20 pounds of extra weight on your body? Do you have skin tags on your body around your armpit, your neck, your eyelids? Those are signs of hyperinsulinemia. Same thing with brown patches around the armpit, neck area, signs of hyperinsulinemia. And if you skip a meal by accident, do you get hungry and angry, hangry? These are signs that your metabolism is only burning sugar. The symptoms. Now, as we progress, we could test. And in terms of cell membrane inflammation, there's not an accurate direct blood test for that. There are indirect blood tests like high sensitivity C-reactive protein, great test, just looking at systemic inflammation. Personally, I want to see mine under 0.5 every time I test, and it usually is. We have homocysteine, another great marker for inflammation, cardiovascular risk of cardiovascular death. I want to see mine personally in the single digits as well. I would make the case that a fasting insulin, although is not considered a direct inflammation test, to me is one of the most important tests, and I use it as an inflammation test. And allow me to explain real quick. There are so many studies that I looked at that I put in the book. One of them that comes to mind right now is called the Whitehall 2 study that shows you could have full-blown hyperinsulinemia, insulin resistance, for on average 6 to 14 years without your fasting blood sugars changing or your A1C, the 3-month average of your blood sugars, changing at all. Meanwhile, you're insulin resistant because the pancreas is so busy, as you know, Stephanie, just producing massive amounts of insulin to clear the glucose until it cannot. And then your blood sugars rise dramatically, and then it's prediabetes, diabetes, etc. So a fasting insulin blood test is one of the most important tests that I would recommend for your metabolism. Personally, 3 to 6 is what I want to see. That means you're super sensitive. Unfortunately, there's a couple of problems with the test. Most conventional doctors don't order it because there's not a medication for high insulin. So you would probably have to pay out of pocket, but it is cheap. In the US, it's like $30 to $50. I don't know what it is in Canada. How much is it in Canada, Stephanie?
It depends. I mean, if you request it, it can be, sometimes it's pay out of pocket, sometimes it'll be covered.
Okay.
It's a bit of a crapshoot.
But it's not expensive, correct?
No, it's not expensive.
Okay.
No.
And then the second thing you want to pay attention to on that report, the reference range on LabCorp or Quest is going to be 3 to 25, 3 to 28.
Yeah.
Which is a problem because if you come back at 17, 12, 21, it's not being flagged as an issue, but that's insulin resistance. So we want between 3 and 6. So I would recommend those blood tests. I would throw in one more thing here, and then I'll stop. The best test looking at cell membrane inflammation, which is 50 times more accurate than any blood test looking specifically at the membrane, is a malondialdehyde test. Metaoxy test is the one, it's actually a urine test that I order in a lot of clients. And you urinate into a vial. The vial has an agent in it, and it turns a certain color. The darker it turns a little red color. You match it to a chart, and it shows you how much cell inflammation you have. So it measures malondialdehyde, which is a free radical that comes off the cell membrane.
Okay, so these are really useful tips. Let's talk a little bit about detox, because I know that this is or the detoxification process, because inflammation can certainly blunt that. You talk in the book about autophagy. When your body detoxifies, obviously we are recycling cells. We're getting rid of old cells that are not working. And, we can naturally and easily access our fat stores when we are in a healthy, let's say, low inflammatory state. And to your point, very much when we're talking about chronic low grade inflammation is what we're talking about here. When we are inflamed, one of the things you talk about is that your metabolism now is going to divert energy to survival mode rather than repair. Can you talk a little bit about the relationship between detoxification and inflammation and fat burning? I think that this is important, especially for my audience, because we have a lot of women will listen to this show because they're trying to optimize for body composition, not necessarily understanding that maybe in the background there's this chronic low-grade inflammation. And then, of course, when we're talking about hormones, our detoxification process is how we metabolize. We choose what pathway our estrogen is going to detoxify on, like what line it's going to go down, depending on what you're eating, levels of chronic low-grade inflammation or not. So let's talk about the relationship between inflammation, detoxification, body fat, and hormone metabolism.
Yeah, so good and so important, Stephanie. That's a great explanation, a great lead up to the question. I think it's probably the top cause of metabolic dysfunction, both men and women of all ages. I say that because we live in such a toxic world. We have the most amount of environmental toxins and chemicals than ever before. And we cannot escape it, but we can do some things to open up those detox pathways and start getting rid of a lot of these toxins. First of all, I'll explain that there are 2 classifications that I referred to in the book. Chapter 5 is about these toxins. So I talk about obesogens and diabetogens. So obesogens are endocrine disrupting hormones, chemicals, that enter the body through our food supply, our water supply, detergents, even makeup, cleaning supplies, exactly. You hop into a Uber and they have that nice little Christmas tree air freshener. You're getting
I get a headache.
I
always ask them to, or they have those little plug-in things that's in the vent and it's blowing the eucalyptus or whatever, the new car smell scent. It's terrible.
It is terrible. I got to ask them to open up the window, and sometimes I'll share with them why it's not good to have that. I feel bad for them. They don't know. But these are they're everywhere. And it goes a step farther here because you mentioned a lot of your ladies they're training, they're eating the protein, they're following all the tips that you're recommending. But when they start burning fat, they start dumping these toxins into the bloodstream, auto-intoxicating themselves, reabsorbing them. And now their metabolism knows every time I burn fat, I dump toxins. I could burn the fat, but I cannot burn these toxins. So I'm going to slow down fat burning, enter weight loss resistance. It leads to cell inflammation, hormone dysfunction, hormone resistance. The list goes on and on. So some simple things we can do before I get into how to keep your detox pathways open. Some simple things you can do. Number 1, avoid the plastics, the microplastics. I know you've seen these studies, Stephanie, showing they're finding these microplastics in men's testicles leading to low testosterone, infertility, they're finding in both men and women's brains and arteries, and it's just everywhere. So glass bottles instead of plastic water bottles, glass Tupperware instead of plastic Tupperware, wooden.
And never microwave. I mean, don't use a microwave in general, but if you have plastic, never microwave your food.
Yeah. Never use it, period, to your point.
Yes.
But if you are, Oh my gosh, talk about a toxic bomb. Yeah, that's important. Plastic cutting boards. A lot of people use plastic cutting boards to cut their meat, their vegetables. That leaches a lot of microplastics. So switch to an all wooden block cutting board. And something that's really interesting, a lot of women and men don't realize that this one behavior that you're doing when you go to the grocery store is causing weight gain and inflammation. And that one behavior is when they ask you if you want your cash register receipt, and when you say yes, you're getting a dose of BPA. Studies show 1,000 times more BPA in that cash register receipt than in canned food. So say no. And I see a lot of ladies, Stephanie, put it in their bra, their mouth, of course, the pocket. I saw your eyes going around like, what is he going to share?
I was like, oh no, am I doing it? No, I actually tell them to keep the receipt because I'm going to see it on my credit card. Exactly. I don't need the receipt. Yeah.
Exactly. So, all right. So now what can we do? We could keep the detox pathways open. There's a lot of things we can do. Strength training and exercise and moving your body. Not only is that important for all the reasons Stephanie educates us on, but also for getting the lymphatic system moving, sweating and detoxifying. Great. Sauna, whether it's infrared, steam, dry, any way you could get the body to activate these heat shock proteins, and sweat is terrific. Then we have our downstream pathways are the liver, the kidneys, the gut, the colon, and the lymphatic system. So supporting the liver is important. As we know, it's a major detoxification organ and also a very important fat loss organ. I want to ask you this question. I'm getting sidetracked for a second, but I want to ask you this question. When I was writing my book, I wrote that the liver is the soccer mom organ of the body because it does everything for the body like a soccer mom.
Yeah.
Hay House thought that was not the right term. They thought it would have offended moms for some reason, and they changed it to the MVP of the body. Let me ask you, is that offensive?
In my soccer mom era, because I am in my soccer mom era, I don't find it offensive. Soccer moms, I mean, even if you're, if you have boys, even if you have girls, you're probably in your soccer mom era. Or, I have many friends who have daughters that are, taking their kids to dance competitions and all of that. You have to balance a lot. Like you're balancing a lot. You're doing carpooling. You are having conversations with people that you don't know. You having this, you're seeing these people every single week. And then you have to make sure that they have pre-nutrition for the game or the dance recital, post-nutrition for the game or the dance recital, the travel, it's a lot. Definitely a multitasker. I'm certainly not offended by that term.
Good, because I say it with I say it out of respect,
with love, right?
With love,
who else is going to bring them?
I'm so impressed with all the things soccer moms do. The liver is also really impressive with all the functions that it does, right? Detoxification, bile production. There's some things we can do to support the liver that are easy. I gave a whole list in the book of bitter-rich foods that stimulate that liver to produce healthy bile. So apple cider vinegar, lemons, limes, ginger, milk thistle. We could do other things like coffee enemas and castor oil packs. So liver support is really important. And then to your point, correct, it's going to create, when you're toxic, it's going to create the toxic estrogens, toxic hormones. It's going to lead to hormone dysfunction. So this is a really important topic for your audience.
And so talk to us a little bit about how inflammation can change the signaling of some of the metabolic hormones. Like we're talking about estrogen, the estrobolome, and how and like the estrogen metabolism. But there's also other metabolic hormones that are affected with chronic low-grade inflammation. So leptin signaling, ghrelin. Talk to us a little bit about how those things can get wonky as well.
Yeah, those are really important, leptin and ghrelin. I'll start with the thyroid and then I'll move on to those because we know, the thyroid is every receptor site. Every cell has a receptor site for the T3 hormone, active thyroid hormone. And what's interesting, Stephanie, and I'm sure this frustrates you, is that most doctors are only testing maybe TSH. Maybe they'll get a T4, possibly out of T3. But TSH alone doesn't really show you what your thyroid health is. It's showing you the connection between the brain and the thyroid. It's not even a thyroid marker per se.
Yeah, that's a brain hormone.
It's a brain hormone. And the reason why is because it doesn't change their recommendation or treatment. So why order the extra labs, right? But we know that the thyroid gets stimulated by the brain to produce T4, which is an inactive version of the thyroid hormone. It needs to be converted and changed into T3, which is the active form. That then goes to the cells, the receptor sites, and then it produces the job of ATP production, fat loss, all the amazing things that you get from T3. If you have a toxic overload or just too much cellular inflammation, those T3 receptor sites are now blunted, meaning you could be taking thyroid medication. Maybe it's the T3 thyroid medication, and then you see your T3 levels improve, and maybe your doctor is saying, look, we're doing a good job, your T3 levels, your free T3 is improving. But if it's not getting into the cell, you might not notice a difference. You might not feel better. You still could feel fatigue, have trouble losing weight. It's like going to the gas station with your car, and if that little panel that you open up to put the gas in, I forget what it's called, but if it's locked and you can't get the gas into the actual gas tank, so you just pour it inside of the vehicle or on top of the car and drive away, it's not working. You got to get it into the vehicle. Same thing with all hormones, not just T3. But so that's one example. And then leptin, of course, is a really important satiety hormone, signals fat burning. It tells you not to overeat, put down the fork. You don't have to go and grab the Oreos. And when there's too much inflammation, it creates leptin resistance. And now you are less satisfied, you have more cravings, and that works in combination with the hunger hormone ghrelin, and that's increased. So now you're hungrier, and it's this vicious cycle. And we could go down the list of all the hormones that are now having problems getting into the cell as a result of cell inflammation. The great news is that when you start lowering cell inflammation, all these hormones now start to do their job much better.
Yeah, and coming back to thyroid for a minute, when we are converting T4 to T3, so inactive hormone, which is, the majority of what the thyroid produces, and then it will be converted to T3, we are seeing that conversion in the liver. So this is, again, why detoxification is very important. We're seeing it in the gut, we're seeing it in the heart, and we're also seeing it in the skeletal tissue, in the skeletal muscle. So, you had mentioned before, weightlifting or resistance training being important. And it's like, yes, that's going to drive up autophagy. One of the best ways that you can actually start cellular cleanup is through strength training, but it's also important for our thyroid, right? So the more healthy, good quality skeletal tissue that we have, we are also going to be supporting thyroid metabolism as well.
Well said. Great explanation. Yeah, I agree.
Let's talk a little bit. So as you were talking about the leptin and the Oreo cookies, this is why I think intuitive eating becomes very difficult. And I find that this word in general, or, this phrase intuitive eating, can be difficult for people to grasp because, it's like, well, if I could choose, I would just have Oreos all the time. It's like, if I could choose, I would just have Haagen-Dazs. I would just have the whole thing. But I think that when we clear out the inflammation, then you will, and you're literally chemically different. You start to crave salads, you start to crave, meat. My son, we, at the time of this recording, just finished up Easter. And so very commonly on his side, they're Greek Orthodox, and not just Orthodox, but many cultures do this. They will fast leading up to, Lent, like the 40 days prior. And at least a lot of Greeks that I know, just because I'm immersed in the culture somewhat, they abstain from meat, right? So they abstain from meat. And then of course on Easter Sunday is like the big feast, right? And so my son, they were all out at a restaurant on his dad's side, and everybody was like, oh no, we're not going to order any meat because, we're fasting. We're fasting for Easter. And he really wanted meat, right? He was like, I really want meat. And it's like, I'm 12. I don't want to do this. He ended up ordering meat. And so I share this story because very intuitively, he naturally craves a lot of meat because of the whole spectrum of vitamins and all the things that you get from meat. And he happens to also love organ meats. This is another beautiful thing about Greek culture. Loves organ meats. My older son eats like eyes and brains and like all the stuff. So talk to us a little bit about how intuitive eating can be hard when you are coming from this state of inflammation, how you may not be making the right choices. Like to your point, like maybe I want the Oreo cookies, or maybe I want, things that are not well for me, because the signals like that, the cravings that you have are feeding the inflammation rather than correcting it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although chapter 7 is all about intuitive eating. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's not.
Yeah, no, but intuitive, I don't mind the term. Like, that was a subtitle for my first book. But I think that some people they'll say, oh, well, if I were to eat intuitively, I would just have chocolate all the time. And it's like, yes. And maybe the reason why you're craving some of these things is because of this low grade inflammation that we're discussing.
Yeah, you're correct. I did not talk about intuitive eating in the book. I was just kidding. But yeah, I hear your point. I agree with you. Yeah, of course. There's the gut microbiome plays a role there. And not just that, but dopamine plays a big role there. We live in this, similar to insulin resistant, we live in this dopamine resistant world where we're getting all these dopamine hits. And intuitively, we want more dopamine hits. That means the cookies, the processed food, the sugar, the donuts.
Yeah, cheap and quick.
Yeah, quick little burst of energy, and it feels good in the moment. And then the more you do it, the more of it you crave. And all of a sudden, it's like all you want are these dopamine hits. So you find yourself doom scrolling on social media. You find yourself in the pantry multiple times a day. And as that progresses, for some people, it leads to addictions to drugs and alcohol and other things just to get a dopamine hit. And a lot of that is inflammation. A lot of that is the gut microbiome. We know the gut's connected to the brain and vice versa. And as we start to clean that up and lower inflammation and repopulate the gut bacteria with different bacteria, healthy bacteria, and create diversity, we start to crave more meat and protein and avocados and eggs and all the things that I want. It takes some time. So to your point, yeah, if you just say, I'm going to just follow my intuitive eating plan and eat whatever I feel like having at the moment, in the beginning, it's probably not the best approach. Eventually, you might get there. Like I could be at that point right now because I've done all this work. I imagine you as well. But at first, it comes to addressing the inflammation part, addressing the gut microbiome, the dopamine resistance. And I always say snacking is usually an emotional event. It's usually out of boredom, out of frustration, out of stress. And when you start to clean up some of those areas in your life, you find that you snack less and you just eat the quality protein, the whole foods during your meals, and there's no need to snack.
Yeah. So when I know that I'm craving chocolate, it's like, oh, when was the last time I took a magnesium supplement? That's sort of my little cue, right?
Yeah.
Let's talk about metabolism. So let's connect the dots with metabolism. What do you think people get wrong about their metabolism and how it works? And what can we do? What are some things that we can sort of reframe in terms of our understanding of metabolism?
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions around the metabolism. You understand it very well, Stephanie. You explain it very well. When we think about the metabolism, I've heard so many people use excuses for why they are unhealthy, overweight, obese, whatever it is. They'll say it's because of my age. Once I hit 40, my metabolism slowed down, or once I hit 50, there's nothing I can do. It's just age, and they just blame their age. So when I started digging into the research, I came across a few studies, but one of the studies I came across that I believe is probably the best one out there on metabolism was a Duke University study from 2021. You know the study? Yeah.
Yep.
And it had 6,600 people in the study, and it was a worldwide study, not even the US. They involved multiple countries, and they took the age group from age 1 to 95 and everything in between. And they used a really sophisticated gold standard of measuring metabolism through this urine test. And essentially the study said between the ages of 20 and 60, there are no significant changes in the metabolism. Once you hit age 60, there's a 0.7% decline every year after, which might sound like a bad thing if you're watching this or listening to this and you're 60 or above. But as you know, Stephanie, the study said the main reason that happens is loss of muscle mass. Yep. So if you follow all the tips you're learning from Stephanie about building lean muscle mass and preserving it, whether you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, or beyond, you could be 75 years old with the same metabolism as when you were 25 years old, and it's all about the muscle mass. So that's really cool to understand. So it's not the age, it's not the genetics, it is the lifestyle. It's not building lean muscle mass. So anything you want to add to that?
I'm so happy you brought this up because I think I hear this a lot. Like, well, my metabolism after I had my baby or after I went through perimenopause or after I went through menopause, my metabolism slowed down. It's like, no, that's not. So there's some physiological changes when we see changes in hormone concentration, like estrogens and testosterones are anabolic hormones. They do help contribute to the satellite cell around the muscle and promoting muscle growth. However, even though, and I was taught this in school, like once you are in menopause, it is almost impossible to build muscle. And of course, we know that that is verifiably false. I mean, there's so many baddies that are 65, 75. They're doing pull-ups with weights and like all this crazy stuff. So I would say, I've said this on the show before, like the best time to start strength training was 10 years ago. The second best time is today, right? So it doesn't matter that you grew up in the cardio section of the gym. It doesn't matter that you've been running marathons your whole life. I mean, I would totally recommend you to stop that, but that's, that's a separate conversation. You can still continue to run if that's something that brings you a lot of pleasure and you love. And if you want to continue running, you probably need to think about injury prevention, which is going to be facilitated through strength training.
Yeah. Well said. Okay. So now that we got that out of the way, your excuses are not valid here. Now let's discuss some of the...
With love. It's with love. With love.
We're not calling you out. We're calling you up to your greatness. We love you all. We want you to feel great and look great. That's why we give you the cold, hard truth here.
Oh, I love that. We're not calling you out. We're calling you up. Oh, Ben, I love that.
I love it.
Yeah, go on. Yes, like preach. Yes, I'm ready.
Yes, let's go. I feel so bad for women and men, but anybody who still believes that if you just cut your calories, you're going to lose weight. It just does them a huge disservice. There's a lot of problems with that. First of all, calories matter. I'm not a calorie denier. They absolutely matter, but they're not important. They're not the most important thing to focus on. They're a distraction. The premise behind the old calories in versus calories out approach is this. I need to get you to lose weight in order for you to be healthy. That's not how the body works. We don't lose weight to get healthy. We get healthy to lose weight. As a matter of fact, if you're overweight right now, and I used to be obese, I was 80 pounds overweight, you don't have a weight problem. I never had a weight problem. Nobody in the history of this world has ever had a weight problem. It's a weight symptom. It's a result of the problem. So counting calories, focusing on calories, is similar to treating the symptom. Getting to inflammation and hormones is similar to getting to the cause. There are 2 studies I put in the book about the whole CECO approach. The first study was looking at the Biggest Loser contestants that, as we know, or some may not know, is a very popular TV show in the US. Obese individuals were put on a really extreme plan of excess exercise, calorie restriction, and they lost a lot of weight. They celebrated them on this final episode, and then the show ended. And this study looked at 14 of those contestants, and it showed that 13 out of the 14 gained all the weight back, and a portion of them gained even more weight than prior to the show. And they measured their leptin levels, as we established earlier, and that plummeted, so they were less satisfied. And their ghrelin levels were through the roof, so they were hungrier. Now they've essentially destroyed their hormones and metabolism from this extreme approach. The other study I put in the book looked at FMTs, fecal microbial transplants, in 2 groups of obese individuals. They calorie controlled both groups, same calories, everything kept the same. The only difference was that one group received fecal microbial transplant from lean, healthy donors, and the other group did not. So they essentially repopulated their gut bacteria with healthy gut bacteria, and they started to lose weight without any calories being changed, right? So the gut, making the point that the gut microbiome plays a role. I think we need to stop treating the body like a calculator or a bank account or a math equation. It's really complex. It's a chemistry lab. And this is great news because it means you don't have to rely on willpower. You don't have to measure everything and weigh your food. Sure, if there's specific goals you want to make, like performance and different things you're doing, there's a time and place to measure calories and track that. But in terms of the general approach to fat loss, it's more of a distraction, and it hurts more people than it does to help them. That's where I stand today on that.
Coming back to that Biggest Loser, I mean, I've heard that study quoted, and just for transparency, I've never read it. I haven't read this study. So, did they postulate that the ghrelin being through the roof and the leptin down? So now we have satiety signals down, so you're not feeling as satisfied with maybe the same amount of meal or same amount of volume of food or calories, and then your hunger signals are ratcheted up. Is it because of the time, like because it was such an extreme weight loss in such a short delta? Is it better to, and my sort of second question there is it better, if we're thinking about weight loss and fat loss in particular, is it better to do it sort of slowly and gradually over a long period of time? Because that's another big thing that I find a lot of women hang up, like they're like, I'm going to join this like 6-week boot camp. I'm going to do like 21 days, 21 pounds, like, these kinds of what I would call predatory marketing.
Yes.
Is it because we are not giving ourselves the grace and the time to actually slowly reduce, our weight so that these metabolic hormones don't go awry? Was that one of the conclusions from the study?
It was. Yeah, that's exactly what they said.
Okay.
So the extreme nature of it was just too much of a change for the body, the metabolism to adapt to. It was too stressful. And that's what ended up happening to their hormones. And Dr. Jason Fung used to always say that's why there's never a Biggest Loser reunion show, and that is true,
right?
Because they gain the weight back, and there's just a better way to do it. You don't have to follow that old approach of calories in versus calories out.
This is honestly, I got to tell you, this is where I struggle as well, because I have coaching programs that are a certain amount of time and length, and I definitely want to give that dopaminergic boost to give people the results that they want. But it's always in the marketing. Like, I think about how long it takes for real change to happen, and it's not sexy. Like, it's not 8 weeks, it's years, it's 18 months,
True.
Right? Even with, and we're going to talk about fasting and the ketogenic diet and, transitioning in and out of those things as metabolic tools. But sometimes I find that people are, and women in particular, and I'm just speaking from the population of women that I speak to, so hard on ourselves. Like, we give ourselves this timeline that is so unrealistic. And then when we predictably fail because we didn't lose 21 pounds in 21 days or, whatever, we're like, God, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just follow through on something? And we blame ourselves. And there's this huge shame and guilt that comes along with it, when all you really had to do was pull that 21 pounds out to like 9 months and very slowly, like, have a, 3 pound a month goal. 9 times 3, no, it's a little bit more than 21, but okay, I can't do math. 27 months. You have to pull it up to 7 months. 3 pounds a month for 7 months. That's very easy to do,
yes. Right?
That's gentle. And I think that we've lost a little bit, and I'd love for you to speak if you've noticed this as well, where women are not gentle with we just want it now. In the same way we want our Uber Eats now, we want the results now. We don't want to actually plan out 6 months or 7 months. And so I mean, just honestly, I struggle with even how to market some of my programs, because like, we're going to be together and I'm going to coach you for 8 weeks or 12 weeks or whatever, however long it is. But what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to install skills that are going to persist and perseverate beyond, the 8 weeks, so that there's there's a person change.
Yeah.
There's a mindset shift.
Yeah, you do it. They do it long enough for it to actually matter. You're spot on. It's years, not months. It's years, not weeks. That's the truth. Now, marketing wise, having an ad or a Facebook ad that says, "Ladies, I'm going to help you lose 3 pounds a month for the next 7 months."
No one's going to click on that.
That's not going to crush your CTR. It's going to tank. So yeah, I think it's okay to have some terms to get them into your world and then educate them on how this actually works. Unfortunately, not just women, but also men, they're using the scale as the number one metric if something's working for them or not.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, let's double click on that. Tell me why. Tell me why we should not be using the scale as a measure of our success, and why it's just our numerical relationship with gravity.
That's a good way to put it. Numerical relationship with gravity. I like that. That's exactly it. Well, I'll give you an example. I have it's called my Fat Loss Academy, and it's men and women are in there, and it's a monthly membership, and anytime somebody cancels, I ask them to fill out a questionnaire. We want to get feedback. We want to do better. Sometimes they'll fill it out. Sometimes they don't. Every Monday, me and my team meet together, and we go over any cancellations and the feedback to see what we can improve. Just 2 days ago, actually yesterday, we had our meeting, and there was one person who canceled, and we looked at the feedback. It was a woman, and she canceled within a month, and she said, "I want to thank you for this program. I learned a lot. I have more energy. My digestive issues are improved. Skin complexion is improved. I have more confidence, but I didn't lose a single pound."
Man.
And she felt like a failure because she had all these improvements. Her life improved, but the number on the scale stayed the same, and she felt like it was a failure. That was a success, and I tried to educate them on that. I actually explained that as the first video, that losing weight is a side effect of getting healthy and pay attention to non-scale victories. I actually have them complete a symptom questionnaire where it ranks their symptoms, and I have them do it every 30 days to see that improve, not just focusing on the scale, but unfortunately, some people just want to see it budge. And sometimes the body will pull fat from the liver. It will do other things before you start losing that weight. You know this, Stephanie. There's many reasons why the scale will fluctuate. You share this on my podcast, going through your menstrual cycle, soreness from a workout, different stressors, different things happening in your sleep. That scale will fluctuate. So it's important to measure your body fat, your lean muscle mass, to write down from 1 to 10 how your energy levels are, your mood, and track those things. And if that is improving, you are not a failure. You are actually successful. Have faith that the weight will continue to come off. But unfortunately, we live in this microwave sort of thinking mentality where we want to see the results right away.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember sharing those things. And I know that whenever I do like a back day, for example, which was this morning. So tomorrow, I know that I'm going to be heavier. Like it's big muscles, right? Same thing with legs. Whenever I do leg day, the next day or the next 2 days, depending on how intense the training session was, it's like 4 or 5 pounds. I can gain 4 or 5 pounds. And that's just the muscle sequestering water. So yeah, they're inflamed. It's an acute, inflammation to our point at the top of the hour. But that woman who canceled her membership is like, she was such a winner.
I know.
Just like better skin, better energy, feels great. And I always tell people when especially women who, and it's like, I get it. You're married to the scale. You want to see it move, but can we triangulate that with a waist to hip measurement? So if your waist measurement went down, but your hip measurement went up, and you're doing my strength training program, that's a win. Yes. Your glutes are getting bigger. Like you are creating that hourglass figure, right? If your waist is getting smaller and you are now creating more of that flare, right, with like bigger glutes, then that's a win for body composition.
I agree, 100%. Yeah. Unfortunately, we just want to see the scale drop.
Yeah.
Men will see that scale drop, and this is a generalization because I've worked with both, but men will see a faster decline in that scale versus women, and that's just the nature of it. You know this better than I do with our hormones, or we have different fluctuations. So men, and then the women start comparing themselves to the men in the group or their husband doing the same plan. And it's just an unfair comparison. We should never compare ourselves to anybody else, period. Only person we should compare ourselves to, men and women, is the person we were yesterday. We just want to beat yesterday. That is the motto. You versus you, baby. That's right. That's all it is. That's right. Let's talk about carbohydrates. My first book and this book seem to be very synchronous in terms of restricting carbohydrates, at least for a time, for improving metabolic flexibility. Talk to us a little bit about that. Yeah, I have your book on my bookshelf back here, the Better Body. I love what an honor. Yes. Thank you. It's an honor to have the book. Let's see. Yeah, carbohydrates. I'm in the keto space. My shirt says Keto Camp. I have a sign behind me that says Keto Camp. I love keto. However, as you know, Stephanie, I'm not dogmatic about it. It's one tool in the shed, not the only tool in the shed. I do not believe in long-term continuous ketosis for both women and both men. Let's just clear that right now. However, I do believe in this tool as a valuable tool for many, many people. Studies show, 2022 studies showed that 93% of Americans are metabolically unhealthy. That's out of every 100 people you see on the street, 93 of them are metabolically unhealthy. In the book, I call them being in a keto deficiency. They're in a fat-burning deficiency. They forgot how to burn fat. Enter keto. When your body's producing ketones, it's simply a byproduct of burning stored fat. Your body breaks down those fatty acids. It's shuttled to your liver. Your liver uses it for fuel, and it produces ketones. And now you have all these wonderful benefits. Ketones stimulate the mitochondria to produce more energy. And with that energy increase, there's a increase in your basal metabolic rate. There's a reduction in inflammation. There's an increase in glutathione. The mitochondria benefit the most. So ladies, especially ladies that are going through perimenopause and then postmenopause, a lot of their symptoms are related to the brain fog, memory issues. I have trouble focusing. And the brain have the highest concentration of mitochondria. Ketones benefit the cells that have the most mitochondria, meaning it'll benefit the brain the most. That's where a lot of ladies and men say, wow, I just feel another level here with my mental clarity, my energy, my mood. So it's a really important tool, especially as some people have their brain have a difficult time using glucose as a fuel source because of neuroinflammation, enter a different fuel source called ketones. So it is terrific. I use it as part of the 30-day protocol in the book. It's used very strategically, where we gradually go from burning sugar to burning fat in about 7 days. Now we're in ketosis. We're doing some time-restricted feeding. And then by the time you reach the week 4, you're flexing in and out. I call it metabolic flexing, where you're using some days in fat burning, some days in sugar burning, and going back and forth, which is the way I think we should be doing it long term.
Fantastic. No, I couldn't agree more. I think that for a lot of women and men, our audience is female, so we'll just speak to them. Metabolic inflexibility, that natural insulin insensitivity and that anabolic resistance that sets in just as a natural function of aging and poor lifestyle habits that are leading to poor quality tissue. I think that when you can pull that lever, when you can just dial back the carbohydrates a little bit and therefore dial back the glucose that is being introduced into the system, you can temporarily increase that insulin sensitivity. You can increase and facilitate glucose uptake into the cell when necessary. And I haven't pulled the article yet, but I just saw this morning just a headline that individuals who work out later in the day. So this is, if you're someone who just cannot get to the gym before work and the only time that you have to go to the gym is, let's say, after work, it's 5 o'clock, it's 6 o'clock, it's 7 o'clock, whatever. One of the problems, of course, with revving up your sympathetics that late in the day is that it's going to affect your sleep. And I just saw, and I'll pull the article and maybe I'll do a solo on it, but taking ketones, so taking an exogenous ketone after the workout can actually help with the different phases of sleep, in particular REM and deep sleep. So I thought that was really interesting, because that's one of the things that I noticed for women. And I'd love your comment here. When you get into an endogenous, like a naturally produced state of ketosis, sleep is really great. Like, women are saying that they're sleeping phenomenally, whereas prior they were having trouble initiating sleep, like getting to sleep, having trouble staying asleep. And so I thought that this was a really interesting study where they were looking at late night exercisers and then taking ketones, exogenous, like a ketone, like maybe a ketone IQ or something.
Yeah.
And then looking at the markers of sleep when someone was, exercising close to bedtime, within that 2 or 3 hour window of bedtime. So I don't have all the details yet, but that was sort of the headline. And I was like, ooh, juicy. I'm going to go.
That is juicy. Yeah, I want to check that out. I don't work out later in the day, but I personally want to try that exogenous ketones later in the day to see if it improves my deep and REM, just out of curiosity.
Yeah. And do you find that when you are able to facilitate someone getting into a natural state or an endogenous, we are producing our own ketones, do you notice people commenting about the quality of their sleep as well?
I see a mix. I see in the beginning, there might be a decline in their sleep as their body's still getting fat adapted. But once they're fat adapted for a few days, then yes, I notice an improvement in, not only do they comment, but we review their Oura Ring stats as well. And I see their HRV increase. I see their deep and REM increase, because there's just less inflammation. It makes sense. The body's being able to repair itself. So yes, I do see that. Not so much in the beginning for a few people, but a few weeks in, as their body's more fat adapted, I do see that.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that observation too. It's not going to just be a switch where you're like, all of a sudden I sleep perfectly.
I wish.
No one's saying that. I wish. Yeah, I wish. It's like, if I had that, I would bottle it up and I would be, on a yacht somewhere. But I do love this idea. And you're very realistic in your observations and reporting of your observations. Like, sometimes in the beginning, it's a little difficult, right? And to get over that hump on the other side is, metabolic bliss, let's say. And because we're talking about sleep, again, my women in their 40s and 50s, this is one, aside from body composition changes, maybe more anxiety, mood, and affect changes, sleep is like maybe top 3. It is absolutely top 3 for women, and they struggle with it. So let's talk about the link between sleep and metabolism. And do you think that women are more sensitive to experiencing poor sleep, to having bouts of insomnia, and to not sleeping restfully, both in quality and quantity?
I do think they're more sensitive to it. I tend to think that, at least from my observation and my relationships with my fiance, my mom, and other females in my life, that they tend to maybe worry or have more like thoughts as they go to bed of like the future, maybe some anxious thoughts.
Ruminating
thoughts.
Yeah.
That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
Versus men, like, we're a little hard-headed. We're just like, I'll deal with it another day. So I know my mom's like that. She has those thoughts that ruminate. My fiance as well. I'm not like that. Like I could take the pressure. I think pressure is a privilege and I adapt to it really well. But I've seen the females in my life not necessarily have that with their thoughts. So it could affect their sleep. So with that being said, sleep is what I call in the book, the Swiss Army knife of metabolic health. Because when you upgrade your sleep, every area of your metabolic health improves. And when you don't fix your sleep and you get poor sleep, you could be doing all the keto, the strength training, the fasting, the supplements, the exogenous ketones, the red light therapy, the sauna, and you're just not going to get the benefits to the extent that you want to get those benefits because sleep is where it's at. You burn fat, you repair. Amazing processes happen where we know the brain is shrinking in size and you have the cerebral spinal fluid flushing over this lymphatic system, flushing out toxins and plaques and proteins, cleaning out the junk. We have the REM cycle of sleep where we're taking short-term memory, processing it for long-term memory. I knew this morning when I woke up and checked my Oura Ring stats, I got like 2 hours and 4 minutes of REM, and I said, I'm going to crush my interview with Stephanie today.
That's beautiful.
I feel good because I got good sleep, right? That's an example of like quality REM. You're just firing on all cylinders. And studies show when you're not getting quality sleep, in just a matter of days, you could have blood sugar levels that mimic a pre-diabetic. You're going to have higher levels of that hunger hormone ghrelin, lower levels of leptin. It creates this vicious cycle where your body wants more energy and it wants carbohydrates and sugar. And it leads to this perpetual cycle of inflammation where then that same night you don't get quality sleep. But the good news is this. Ladies, I've got some great tips for you regarding sleep. I've taken 7,000 people through my keto protocols, and sleep is a big part of that. So I've tested a lot of this on the men and women in the program and on myself. So I'll share with you what I think has worked the best with my group. And I share a little bit of this in the book as well. What chapter is it? Chapter 6, it's all about sleep. So here's an interesting thing. A sleep mask. Now, people hear sleep mask and they think, yeah, I know, because the light exposure, that's not good, and that is true. But I'm not saying to wear a sleep mask because it's mitigating light exposure. That is something you want to do, whether it's a blackout curtain or a sleep mask. But the reason why I recommend a sleep mask, I learned this from my friend, Dr. Peter Martoni, who's called Dr. Sleep, right? Do you know Peter at all?
I do, yeah. Okay. I think we were many years ago. I think we were in a mastermind together. Okay. He's a DC, right?
He's a DC. Was it UAC maybe?
It was UAC, okay. Dr. Patrick Gentempo. Yeah,
exactly. So he's
Shout out to my mentor.
Shout out to Patrick Gentempo. Yeah, so Peter taught this to me, so I want to give him credit. He said, look, in order for you to increase your heart rate variability, which is looking at your nervous system and it's adapting between sympathetic and parasympathetic, and to be able to get more deep sleep and REM sleep, your body needs to feel safe. Ladies, you need to feel safe. So when you put a sleep mask on and it has that light pressure applied around your eyes, it activates your parasympathetic tone and it signals you're safe. And it allows you to calm down, get into bed, relax, and then fall asleep and get good sleep. So a sleep mask is wonderful for that. On top of that, this might be something you do or don't do. Some people think it's weird. We see it become a trend on TikTok these days, but mouth taping is something that I personally do.
Love it.
I've been doing it for years. And because I was a chronic mouth breather, a lot of people breathe through their mouth.
It's changed my face.
Me too, Stephanie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same. You've been doing it. How long have you been doing it?
I've been doing it for like 3 years consistently. And it's just, I just have like the 3M, micropore, surgical tape.
That works.
I just get it on Amazon, whatever.
Yeah.
But it's changed my face.
Same.
So I would wake up kind of like just sort of puffy, always stuffed in the nose when I woke up. And I don't have that anymore.
Yeah.
And I just also find the shape of my nose is different. I feel like my jaw is, my whole face is different, like for the better.
Yeah, no, for the better. Exactly. That's all improvements. Yeah, for me too. Same thing. What it does for those wondering, we don't want to breathe through the mouth for the majority of the time that we breathe. And now when we exercise, it's a different story. When I'm talking, it's a different story. But especially when you sleep, when you're breathing through your mouth, you're depleting nitric oxide. You're activating the sympathetic tone, not the parasympathetic tone. So you're going to get less deep sleep, less REM sleep. So by putting a piece of tape over your mouth, whether it's a 3M or a product, I use a product, but you put this adhesive over your mouth, it trains you now to breathe through your nose, which then you produce more nitric oxide, which is vasodilation. It's really important for many things. It signals vagal tone, it signals parasympathetic activation. You just get better sleep, and not to mention it changes your facial structure to get more of that narrow jaw, which is healthy. It's healthy essentially. So that's one thing. And then a cold bedroom. Now I know ladies that are going through menopause have they might have hot flashes, and I use a cooling pad, a chili pad. Yeah, it's called a chili pad is what I use. And I set mine to 57 degrees Fahrenheit.
Wow.
That's super cold, but
That's cold.
I know it's cold, but I live in Miami, not in Toronto. And I like have a whole bunch of blankets and a weighted blanket on my core. And what else? Melatonin has been a game changer. I'd love to share a little bit more about how melatonin is really important for men and women before you have any
Please,
follow-ups.
yes.
Okay.
No, I would love that. Yes.
So melatonin, yes, could help with sleep, but in chapter 11 of the book, where I go over biohacks and biohack supplements and different things you can do for your health, I talk about melatonin. Do you know Dr. John Lawrence at all?
I don't know that name. No.
He's a chiropractor, a naturopath, and has a clinic in Sarasota called Advanced Rejuvenation, and he has a book called Melatonin Miracle Molecule. He wrote a section, like a couple paragraphs in the book regarding melatonin. I think every woman needs to be on some cyclical use of melatonin. Stephanie might disagree, and we'll get Stephanie's thoughts in a second, but melatonin is not just for sleep, first and foremost. It's one of the most important antioxidants for your mitochondria. It helps you buffer oxidative stress. It helps with inflammation. It could also help with sleep, but I'm not suggesting it necessarily for sleep. I'm suggesting it for all the other benefits. And this might surprise you, but I personally do very high doses of melatonin. And when I say high doses, Stephanie, I mean 100 milligrams to 300 milligrams of melatonin on a cyclical basis because, number one, yes, melatonin is a hormone, but unlike testosterone, progesterone, estrogen, there's no negative feedback loop. I haven't found one study, and I've asked so many people in our space to show me one study that shows melatonin shuts down endogenous production of melatonin. And the answer is there's nothing out there, unless you've seen something that I haven't seen. Only in animals they've seen it, never in a human. Have you ever seen it in a human?
I mean, I don't know off the top of my head. So what you're saying is that there's no feedback loop, like there's no down regulation with like some of these super physiological levels. Is that what?
Yeah, there's studies by Russell Ryder showing individuals in these studies taking 400, 600 milligrams of melatonin for months, getting off of it, measuring, and there's no change. The body still produces what it needs to produce. There's no negative feedback loop, unlike testosterone or progesterone or other hormones.
Okay. I mean, that is new information to me, which is why we have the show, because I am learning alongside my buddies.
That was new information to me too. Dr. John had to share that with me. So anyways, I share that because I think it's a valuable resource for men and women dealing with inflammation and stress. You don't have to go as high dose as me, but finding some sort of groove to use melatonin, I think is going to be beneficial for your audience.
Yeah, I had Michael Bruce on the show maybe last year, and he was talking about, around the age of somewhere between 52 and 55 years of age, our melatonin production literally falls off a cliff. And so and then that usually coincides with a lot of difficulty sleeping. I mean, there's other things that can be happening, of course, stress, chronic stress that we've been talking about, and inflammation, a drop in progesterone, going through menopause on that huge change on the body. But he was talking about, I believe it's called herbitone. I think it's herbitonin or herbitonin, which is
herbitonin from Deanna Minnick.
Yes. So he was talking about this. This is a plant-based melatonin that mimics the amount that humans would make. I think it's like 0.3 milligrams. I could be wrong. I will fact check myself for the show notes, but he was saying that is a really nice for people who are, because what I found, and I might be an outlier, I'm not sure, but when I take melatonin, even at the 3 milligram level, I wake up. So I'll fall asleep and then I'll wake up and then I can't get back to sleep. So I don't know if that's just stress. That could be many, many things, but I've consistently found that when I'm taking the 3 mgs of melatonin, I'll fall asleep after I've taken it, but then I'll wake up in the middle of the night. So I was describing this to him and he was like, why don't you try herbitonin? It's like 0.3, which is similar to what humans will produce. And it's, and so I have it somewhere in my supplement closet. I'm not taking it, to be honest.
I'm curious to know if that does help. And you're right. I looked it up. They have a 0.3. They also have a 3 milligram version.
Okay.
To your point, there are some people that have certain genetic SNPs. They're sensitive to melatonin. For some people, it has the opposite effect. It leaves them more wired than it does helping them fall asleep. There's different ways to go about it. I know Dr. John actually has people who get wired from melatonin take it during the day for energy. It's so crazy, but yeah, it's different for everybody. I do really well with melatonin, but there is going to be a percentage like you, Stephanie, who it actually impacts their sleep negatively. So finding some sort of groove that works for you. And I'm curious if you do the Herbatonin and if it does help you, that'll be good feedback.
Yeah, I mean, I bought it after the conversation with him, and it's just sort of sitting in my supplement closet gathering dust. So I really should get off.
I know why, because you don't want it to. You don't want to take it and ruin your night, and then the next day you're like,
I'm like, oh man, I should do it when I don't have anything important the next day.
Exactly. It needs to be done on a day where you have nothing important to do, which, Stephanie, that's not any day because you're doing everything that's important.
Soccer mom era. It's that soccer mom era thing again. I actually wanted to come back to what you said about the eye mask or the sleep mask. This is such an important little hack or little piece of advice that you gave before. Whenever you see someone that's really stressed and they're just sort of like rubbing their eyes, or if you're watching on video, I'm sort of like pushing on, the inner corners of my eyes. There's a physiological response that lowers your heart rate when you do that. So when we are like sort of rubbing our eyes, we're like, oh, I'm so stressed. And you're pushing on the inner corners of your eyes. You are literally activating a parasympathetic reflex that helps to lower your heart rate. So I think that that's also an important qualifier when we're thinking about healthy sleep. Having that pressure around the orbit and just that gentle pressure is going to induce that heart lowering effect that you were talking about and being able to feel safe. And that, I love that you use the word safety, Ben, because this is something that, in just speaking to thousands of women, working with thousands of women, we need to feel safe. If we do not feel safe, we cannot heal. It doesn't matter, like you said, how much strength training we're doing, how much cardio we're doing, building the perfect plate, we're doing all the recovery things. If we don't feel safe, we can't heal because you're stuck in that sympathetic dominance. So I just wanted to highlight that because there's some really, you sort of said it in passing and I was like, no, we got to come back to that because that is a very, maybe the most important point is if women do not feel safe, they cannot heal.
Yeah, I'm glad you emphasized that. And that is interesting about the pressure. Yeah, I naturally do that. I'll rub my eyes.
When we do this, right? We push on our eyes.
It feels so good.
Yeah, because we're lowering our heart rate, we're reducing our stress, which is cool.
Interesting.
Let's talk a little bit about fasting. So again, fasting for metabolic health. Talk to us how, as women, in your opinion, with your clinical, like what you've seen with the women that you work with, what are some of the ways that we can utilize this tool for optimizing our metabolic health?
Well, you explained this so well, how women, I would just say follow Stephanie's input on how women should fast. However, I will also say this. I see practitioners in our space, Stephanie, men and women, who say women should never fast because it's a stress to the body. That's like, I think that's also similar to saying women should never exercise because it's a stress to the body. It's not the stress.
Or like, don't exercise in the luteal phase of the cycle. It's like, shut up.
Right.
I am not going to not weight train for 2 weeks out of the month.
Come on. You can't tell Stephanie not to do that. How dare you?
I take offense.
Yeah. It's not the stress that makes it bad. Are we adapting to the stress?
Right.
Now, fasting, that they could be completely right. If women are fasting and they're not adapting to that stress, it's not good for you. But if you adapt to it, it's actually extraordinary for you. And that's where the hormetic effect comes into play. I talk about hormesis in the book. So what hormesis means, essentially, you intentionally or unintentionally apply a stress, your body adapts to the stressor, you're healthier, you're stronger, you burn more fat, you feel good as a result. But if that stress was too much for your body to adapt to, you're inflamed, you're in the wrong direction. Exercise is the perfect example. If you're a couch potato and you go and you sign up for a CrossFit workout and they have you run through a 60-minute WOD, which is the workout of the day, you did too much on your first workout and now you've violated hormesis where you actually are going to be sore for a few days. You might even hurt yourself. You don't run a marathon without training for it. If that same example, that person went from sitting on a couch to, all right, I'm going to do a 5,000 step walk today and some body weight exercises. They applied a light stress. They got some sleep. They adapted to it. Now they stayed in this hormetic zone. Same thing with fasting. We got to find the sweet spot. How do you know what that sweet spot is? Well, a couple things to pay attention to. We already talked about heart rate variability. I think it's one of the most important metrics for women to track to see if the stressors in your life are good stressors or too much stress. And that includes fasting. It includes all these biohacks, cold plunge, sauna, PEMF therapy. They're all stressors to the body. It doesn't mean they're bad unless it's too much. What we want to do is find your average heart rate variability. That's different for everybody. To test it for 7 days, I use an Oura Ring. You could use an Apple Watch, a Whoop Band, whatever it is. There's different devices. But you find your 7 days or 2 weeks worth of data and get an average. Let's say it's 37. First of all, I don't think I explained what it's giving you. I explained it briefly, so let me explain it a little bit more.
Sure.
When your nervous system is stuck in a sympathetic fight or flight response, that's too stressful. It's not good. You want to go back from sympathetic fight or flight, stressful response to parasympathetic rest, digest, detoxification, and you want to have a good balance. HRV, as it increases, it's showing you you're adapting to these stressors very well. You're going from sympathetic, which are the stressors, the fasting, the cold plunge, whatever it is, to parasympathetic rest, digest, recovery. So as you find your average, if you're doing a fast, let's say it's a 16-hour fast, and you notice when you tracked your HRV that night, the next morning, and it dramatically decreased, that fast was too much of a stressor for your body. You didn't adapt to it, or the cold plunge, or the sauna, whatever it is. So, but if you don't see that drop in your HRV, and you see it stay at average or increase, you adapted to that stressor very well. You could also use your resting heart rate as a gauge, or deep sleep, your REM sleep, how you feel. So fasting is great though, when you adapt to the stress. It's amazing for insulin sensitivity, the autophagy, which you also get through strength training. It's incredible for brain-derived neurotropic factor, this brain fertilizer. It's incredible for human growth hormone production. It's incredible for digestive health. It's also incredible for stem cell regeneration, especially during these longer fasts. But it needs to be the right variation. And that's where you follow Stephanie, because she breaks it all down for you on how women who are cycling versus women who are postmenopausal could apply fasting the right way.
Beautiful. I love it. Yeah, I think that there's so many tools in the toolbox that we have for ramping up adaptation and this long-term, positive adaptation to the stress that we're applying. I think that where I have seen women get into trouble is we equate more with better, right? So if you, and so we say, okay, so 12 hours of fasting felt really good. So now I'm going to do 16. And okay, 16 hours felt good. So now I'm going to do just an OMAD, or I'll do a 24-hour. And then we get stuck in this extreme way of thinking rather than being, you're talking about being flexible. I think that also stems from just having that cognitive flexibility, like giving yourself some grace, and also not necessarily more is not always better. And that's true for long-term keto, which we've talked about, long-term fasting, exercising. Like you can totally overdo it when you're exercising as well. I often am trying to pull people back off of cardio. It's like, no, I need to go to my high intensity, interval training class, whatever it is, whatever company I've mentioned, like Orange Theory, like 400 times. At some point, they're going to send me a cease and desist letter. But and I love high intensity training. I think it's very important for bone density. I think it's very important for explosive power, for training up those type 2 muscle fibers. But you can totally overdo it. You need a lot of recovery from a high intensity. I maybe do once a week because I need a lot of recovery from that. It is a very intense exercise. So I really like the approach that you've taken with this book and just in general to, we're talking about metabolic flexibility, but I think in general, there's a cognitive flexibility to your approach to health and healing as well, which I just want to highlight and appreciate it in you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, definitely cognitive flexibility. I like that term, and big part of it. Yeah, the mental health, chapter 10 is actually all about that, how your thoughts influence your health or disease you choose. And it's a big part of how I live and what I teach as well.
I love that. So if people want to find out more about you, drop the name of the book, is there a membership that they can find? Like, where can people find you online and all the places?
Thank you, Stephanie. What an honor to come back on the show and talk about this. I loved our conversation we had today and recently on my podcast. I just got my author copy, Stephanie. Here it is right here. It's called Metabolic Freedom. Our colleague, Dr. Mindy Pelz, wrote the foreword.
Yeah.
And
what's the image? Show me the image again.
It's an exploding chili pepper, kind of signaling like sparking the metabolism.
Oh, I love it.
Popping.
I love it.
And I like the red hot chili peppers as well.
Yeah.
Nice. So the book split up into 2 parts. The first half is all about the problems. We have to first identify the interference before we remove it. So I share this is what's interfering with the metabolism. Second half are the solutions. We discussed a few of them today. I go deeper in the book, and then it's all tied together with a 30-day plan, because it's not the information that's going to make a difference in your life, it's the application of that. So I want to make sure you actually understand it and now you could apply it. So I hold your hand for 30 days and show you exactly how to do this. There's a beginner plan and an advanced plan. The book's called Metabolic Freedom, and you could get it today over at metabolicfreedombook.com. And we have a special gift for your audience. When you do purchase it there, it's available on all retailers. We have different links, Amazon, Barnes & Nobles, wherever you want to get it on that page. It's available via Kindle, Audible. I narrated the Audible myself, and also paper or hardcover, as I just showed here. With the purchase of the book, you get a 12 lesson course on the metabolism, along with some exclusive interviews in that course with Dr. Jason Fung, Cynthia Thurlow, Megan Ramos, and Dr. Daniel Pompa. And all that's for free. We don't collect the credit card. I want to give that to your audience for free. So that is metabolicfreedombook.com to get that course with a purchase of the book.
Wonderful. Cynthia is a good friend of mine, so I know that whatever you've talked about in there is going to be absolutely fantastic.
I love it.
So we'll make sure that that link is in the show notes. Ben, thank you again. Round 2 did not disappoint. This was fantastic.
No, it's always a great time. Thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Hey, friends, how did you like that convo with Ben? I've known Ben for a really long time. You can probably tell from our conversations, hangs out with a lot of chiropractors and knows a lot of chiropractors in the space. Certainly one of my mentors, Dr. Patrick Gentempo, who fundamentally changed the way that I look at health and health promotion, is very well aware of him. Okay, so things that I liked in this episode and things that I am unsure of. So let's start with the unsure of stuff first. So unsure of that melatonin supplementation. Like, I gotta say, a little bit gobsmacked at that amount. I think he was saying like 300 milligrams of melatonin, and he finds no difference in that. I am going to go now on a nerd safari and try to find, I just find it so difficult to believe that there's no positive feedback loop like he was describing. So I'm unsure about that. I am much more comfortable with a 0.3 milligram dosing of melatonin, maybe the herbatonin that I was recommended by Dr. Michael Bruce, who's affectionately known as the sleep doctor, because that's very much in line with the human production that we made. So not super sure about that, although I did like everything that he was saying around sleep. So the sleep mask, making the room cold and dark and quiet, and mouth tape, all of that checks out. Those are things that I love to do and practice every night, in addition to my very elaborate skincare routine right before. We didn't talk about that. I wonder why. Maybe because he's a guy and maybe doesn't care about skincare as much as I do. But so loved everything that he had to say about sleep. Really liked the studies that he incorporated into the book. The one around that metabolic study where your metabolism doesn't change from the age of 20 to 60. And then even at 60, now we start to see like that 0.7 up to 1% decline in your metabolic rate. I know a lot of women, even colleagues of mine, when I've shared that study with them, they're like, listen, I don't care what that study says. My metabolism is different. And I think that part of that is due to the loss of skeletal muscle, and not only just skeletal muscle, but good quality skeletal muscle. There's a difference between just having muscle that never contracts and, muscle that you are exposing to mechanical tension over time. That's not, if you think about the difference between a filet mignon and a ribeye, we want the filet mignon steak, right? We want the filet mignon muscle where we don't have that fatty infiltration, where we can contract freely without having the impedance of fat in there. So love that study. Also like the Biggest Loser study. I think it's like a kick in the butt for me to go and actually pull this up to see the changes that some of the metabolic hormones that Ben was describing. So increases in ghrelin, or the hunger hormone, and leptin when we are losing weight too quickly, which of course reinforces my philosophy. And I was saying to my AV producer, my integrity is going to keep me poor because I will not sell something without a long-term view in some capacity to it. So, if it's some 21 pounds in 21 days, like, you're never going to see me sell anything like that. I am looking for long-term change. I hope that you appreciate that as well. And then love the labs that he gave as well. So when we're looking for markers of inflammation, looking at high sensitivity C-reactive protein, looking at homocysteine, looking at fasting insulin, I thought those were really great and a good guideline for you as well. I think that Ben brings a lot to the table in terms of reevaluating and coming back to basic foundational principles. I think that sometimes in science and in the pursuit of health, we can get, really distracted with, new shiny objects and new shiny medications and new shiny this and that. And Ben is really good at talking about some of the simple science that has been reinforced over time, really good habits, and wanting to know what you think. Are you going to be trying melatonin at 100 or 300 mgs, or are you going to try something different or not at all? Would love to hear what you thought of the episode in general. If you are listening this late into the episode, you are a dark roast Betty. You are one of my hardcore true Betties. So would love to hear from you. And without, we'll catch you next time. But I really want to hear what you thought on Spotify, iTunes. Leave us a review. Tell us what you thought. We're always watching. So catch you next time.